Meeting number 20 will now come to order. Please stand for the playing of the national anthem. Tim Dorn, who lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, Council is appreciative to have Pastor Drew Tucker of Capital University here to pray with us. Pastor, welcome to Council.
Thank you, President Hardin, esteemed council members. It's an honor to be with you tonight. I look forward to sharing in this time with you, so I invite everyone to take a posture of prayer that is comfortable in your own traditions. We pray to the Creator, the lover, the restorer of all things, sacred source of all life. We pray that you would send your spirit of abundance upon these, your people, who seek to bring abundant life to the citizens of Columbus. We hold before you the blessed diversity of our community, different races and abilities, religions and genders, sexualities and ethnicities, all of whom call this municipality our home. We recognize in each person who lives in this great city a divine reflection, a sacred spark, the very image of God in its unified plurality. So we thank you for Columbus, along with its people and leadership. We ask that you would sanctify their shared purpose of ensuring that all people of all identities can thrive. Put us now to that sacred work, that all might find your sacred rest. And all the people said, Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosity, Padilla, Brown, Dorrance, Favor, Remy, President Hardin. Any person who takes any actions to obstruct or interfere with the conduct of tonight's meeting may be charged with disturbing a lawful meeting pursuant to Columbus City Code 2317.12. Any person who enters those areas of city council chambers reserved for city officials or invited guests may be charged with criminal trespass pursuant to Columbus City Code 2311.21.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosity, Padilla, Brown, Dorrance, Favor, Remy, President Hardin.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. This week's communications received by the city clerk's offices are listed on the agenda and will be published on the city bulletin. Are there any other communications to be read into the record?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any resolutions or announcements by council members, starting with Councilmember Bangston? Councilmember Rosa de Padilla? Councilmember Brown? President Pro Tem Dorrance. Councilmember Favor.
Thank you, Council President Hardin. Tonight we have Resolution 0073X-2023 to recognize April 24th through April 28th as 2023 as National Reentry Week. At this time, I'd like to invite Zach Rupel from Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative to the podium. Every year, over 600,000 individuals return to their communities from state and federal prisons. This includes the estimated 2,000 people returning from prison or jail to Columbus each month. Formerly incarcerated people face a multitude of challenges when transitioning back into society, including finding and maintaining employment, locating safe and affordable housing, obtaining reliable transportation, reuniting with family, assessing health care and mental health services, and dealing with the trauma of reentry, which can lead to recidivism. Everyone deserves the opportunity to pursue a successful future, and we as a community must create opportunities for them to do so. We have to work towards establishing policies focused on removing the obstacles formerly incarcerated people face to reentry into their respective communities in an effort that will increase the strength and safety of our local communities. Coalitions, including the Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative and the Franklin County Reentry Advisory Board, have demonstrated their advocacy on this issue through their sponsorship of Central Ohio Reentry Week. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Zach Ruppel from Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative.
Good evening, and thank you, Council President Hardin, President Pro Tem Dorans, Councilmember Favor, and members of the Columbus City Council. My name is Zach Ruppel, and I currently have the honor of serving as the National Policy Director for Just Leadership USA, and am a proud volunteer with the Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative. It's an honor to be before you this evening and to elevate and celebrate re-entry this week and all weeks. Last year alone, well over 10,000 Central Ohioans returned to our community from prisons and jails. These returning citizens represent all walks of life, all offense types, and have a wide variety of holistic needs, but what they all have in common is one thing: their time was served. And yet, while this seems like an obvious notion, it cannot be understated the extreme uphill battle and in many cases ongoing sentence that many returning citizens face as they re-enter Central Ohio. The Central Ohio Restored Citizens Collaborative is dedicated to ensuring every citizen who has served their time is able to meet their basic needs as they return to our community. We also recognize that every returning citizen needs and deserves this help regardless of age, race, gender, orientation, ability, or past offense. In the same way, that society as a whole is recognizing the need to move from retributive to restorative justice, our justice professionals, community organizations, and members of local government must dedicate themselves to operate in a similar manner. The City of Columbus has a unique opportunity in the coming months to increase equity for those with lived experience in the justice system by increasing access to housing and training, while also reducing barriers and carve-outs within existing policy. Aiding in successful reentry for all is the most direct way our community can help reduce recidivism while demonstrating the opportunities that do make this city great. We applaud this chamber for viewing returning citizens not as a problem to solve, but rather a key voice at the table to help create solutions together. Thank you again for this recognition, and I would like to turn the microphone over to my colleagues.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Christina Ray. 5 years ago, last month, I returned from prison. Next month, I graduate with my master's in social work from OSU. So I find it fitting that April is Reentry Month. And I can tell you, both as a professional and as a returning citizen, reentry is no easy feat. So Central Ohio has a lot of great reentry events planned this week. I encourage everyone to look into them. I'm currently gainfully employed with Arch Reentry, where I've seen firsthand the importance of reentry efforts, especially that with housing, the obtainable housing, affordable housing, the fact that we can even find a place to live. Arch developed a trauma-informed peer support program that emphasizes the importance of peer support in reentry for those reacclimating back into the community. I use this program as my evaluation project this year for my master's. It proved to be statistically and practically significant, along with confirmation from the participants that it had a profound impact on them. I mention this to emphasize the importance of peer support in reentry efforts in our community and for policies and for funding. I hope that you get the chance to learn more about the importance of reentry and you can help our community promote it.
Hello, thank you, City Council, for having us here and for this proclamation. So last year, I'm just going to remind you, one of our colleagues was here and told a really profound story because he had been incarcerated. I too, 25 years ago, found myself incarcerated. But what he said was he learned about horticulture. And in planting a tree,
If you do not plant that tree in the proper soil and with the proper lighting and with the proper watering and the proper care, that tree will die. And in the same way, when people come back to this community, we need to offer them the same things that other citizens are offered, because you see, that's all we want, is to be citizens again. And so in this week, we hope that you will join us in some of the events that we have, and I'd like to just tell you some of the things. So tomorrow, from noon to 3 at St. Stephen's, we will have what we call our community pop-ups. So people will be able to get some direct services, birth certificates, ID vouchers, get their SNAP benefits or Medicaid in order. They can find out about job resources, mental health resources. And then tomorrow, we have, tomorrow evening from 6:30 to 8, we are offering an event called Released, Art and Freedom. And it is local artists who have been through the justice system who will be displaying their art, as well as their talents, including Mr. Zach Ruppel, who is an amazing pianist. And we will be offering some hors d'oeuvres, and so come and have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and understand where this community comes from. Because again, we just want to be like you. The last event that I'd love to invite you to is called Reckoning with Reentry and Repair. It is a conversation. An anti-violence scholar, Danielle Sarad, will be joining Bishop Gregory Palmer and local justice experts to talk about the responses of violence and restorative reentry. That will be at the Bexley United Methodist Church from 12:30 to 2. Now, a couple of these things you do have to register for, and you can do that at centralohiorcc.com. And we welcome you, and as we hope you welcome everyone into the community. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your continued work and advocacy in this space. I'd ask my colleagues to help join me in a round of applause to you for your educational accomplishments. This is exactly why we're doing what we do. It's a very big deal, so congratulations on achieving this accomplishment. Thank you to the collaborative and all those in our community that continue to provide love and support to our residents, no matter what their background may be. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Bankston.
Councilmember Farrar, I just really wanted to underscore something that you said and make sure that we highlight that Reentry Week is about celebrating those that are reentering. But one thing that you said I want to make sure that we make clear is that whether behind bars or out of bars, they were always citizens.
Yes.
And you were always a part of this community. And I truly believe that no one, what they do on their worst day doesn't define who they are as a person. And so we want to uplift that in this chamber and in this community and let you and anyone else know, because all of us have a family member or know someone that has been impacted by this, that Columbus is your home. There are second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth chances here. And we want folks to realize that and hope that other folks in this community, both be it private sector, nonprofit, whoever you may be, also think about this population of folks because they are a part of our community and you are and always have been a part of the community, regardless of what your time was or time after. So I just wanted to make sure I lifted that up.
Thank you, Councilmember Bankston, for underscoring that. And, you know, to my colleagues, we have been focused on truly removing barriers to folks who are returning back home. And so whether it's removing barriers for employment opportunities or housing opportunities, we appreciate the work that the collaborative and council has done collectively to ensure that we're bringing a comprehensive approach to resolving and helping our residents out. So with that, I'd move for adoption.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopted.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That is all for me, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Remy.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden. I have two resolutions this evening. First, I'd like to invite our guests from the Central Ohio Reuse Coalition to the podium as I introduce 78X 2022 to commit the City of Columbus to the reduction of plastic in Central Ohio and to encourage community members, organizations, and businesses to commit to plastic reduction. Did you know that Americans represent less than 5% of the world's population, but generate 12% of the world's solid waste? Or that Americans discard about 35.7 million tons of plastic each year, but only 5% of it is recycled? According to 2019 Waste Characterization Report from the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio, there is an estimated 48,016 tons of plastic that go to the landfill every year from the city's residential waste stream. The City of Columbus spends hundreds of thousands of dollars annually to support litter cleanup and abatement in all areas of the city. We recently announced the launching of 2 new waste and reuse convenience centers. We commit to educating residents to better reduce, reuse, and recycle through programs like Green Spot, Keep Columbus Beautiful, and Cleaner Columbus. It will take all of us to tackle litter and divert food waste, plastic waste, and yard waste from our landfill. We encourage all businesses and organizations and community members to reduce their use of single-use disposable plastics. Thank you to the Central Ohio Reuse Coalition for their advocacy of plastic-free policies and actions in our growing partnership. I'm excited to have joining us today to share more about their work, Douglas Kalem and Julian Anderson. Thank you both for being here to celebrate Earth Month. We were out all day on Saturday at various events throughout the city, and so this is really appropriate as we move to weekly collections starting in June. We need to get those numbers up for all residents across the city of Columbus. So happy to have you here this evening. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. Hope you can hear me. They say that your disability is your opportunity, so I'm being opportunistic. My name is Douglas Kalem. I'm the founder and director of the Central Ohio Reuse Coalition, or CORC for short. It's an honor to be here tonight. CORC is made up of nonprofits, green businesses, faith-based organizations, local sustainability groups, and committed individuals who live and work in Central Ohio. CORC is also a chapter of the Austin, Texas-based Plastic Reduction Project. First, I'd like to thank Councilman Remy and his staff for their help in preparing this resolution and bringing it to council for a vote. I'm encouraged that City Council recognizes the importance of reducing disposable plastics and plastic pollution, not just because of the waste we see choking our rivers and littering our streets, but because plastic pollution here in Columbus helps reduce the toxic effects of plastic pollution upstream, the extraction, transportation, refining, and the impact it has on frontline communities. CORC is motivated by 3 facts. Reuse saves lives, reuse saves money, and reuse creates jobs. There isn't enough time to detail the health impacts that research has demonstrated recently. The nano and microparticles that enter into the air we breathe, the food we drink, and the food we eat, and the water we drink. This poses a clear and present danger to our individual and collective health. This is good enough reason to reduce plastic. Reuse saves money because every time you throw away plastic containers or utensils, you're basically throwing money away. Reuse beats disposables by any measure. The city, in partnership with SWACO, is rightly concerned with increasing recycling rates as a way to divert waste from our landfills. But let's not forget the other 2 R's that precede recycle: reduce and reuse. This resolution establishes Council's commitment to plastic reduction. Our vision is a Central Ohio where reuse is the model of choice for businesses and schools. Reuse can be an individual choice, like you bring your bags when shopping or your cup getting a drink. But reuse is also a structural solution to plastic reduction when it is supported by a reuse infrastructure that creates circular economy jobs. CORE looks forward to working with Councilman Remy and Council to come up with practical solutions and policies, ordinances to reduce plastic, accelerate reuse, and build a reuse infrastructure. Again, bears repeating, reuse saves lives. Reuse creates jobs. Reuse saves money. On behalf of all of us at CORE, thank you for your time and appreciate your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming down and your advocacy, Doug. And we're happy to partner with you and look forward to a big relationship moving forward. So are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for adoption.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Adopted.
Next, I'd like to invite Damian, Matt, and Lisa early to the podium as I introduce 79X 2023 to honor and celebrate Mr. Damian Early, a student at Whetstone High School in Columbus, Ohio, for receiving a U.S. patent for his the garbage lot invention. Mr. Damian Early is an 11th grader at Whetstone High School, is deserving of this recognition for his outstanding commitment to innovation, sustainability, excellence, and community responsibility. An avid learner and problem solver, Damian has participated in numerous invention competitions and programs throughout his youth. In January this year, Damian received a patent from the United States Patent and Trademark Office for his invention titled the Garbage Lot. While still in high school, Damian remains a leading champion advocating for cleaner communities in Central Ohio. In the future, he has aspirations to see his product out in the real world one day, and that his invention will lead to an internship, career, and educational opportunities to pursue a career in engineering. Columbus City Council appreciates your commitment to innovation and congratulates you for receiving a U.S. patent for the garbage lot. Thank you so much for coming down this evening along with your parents, Damian. Just wanted to allow you the opportunity to say a few words, talk about your journey here, and a little bit more about your invention this evening. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Councilmen and Councilwoman. I'm Damian Early. I'm 17 years old, and I attend Whetstone High School in Clintonville. And I'm here today with my lovely parents, and it's an honor to be here today. When I was in third grade, I joined the Invention Convention competition and participated third, fourth, and fifth grade years, which helped me improve my design skills, my communication skills, my presenting skills. And again, in eighth grade, I found that recycling and trash bins all around the city are constantly being toppled over by the windy weather we have here in Columbus. And so I aspired to make an invention to help reduce this. And I took it to the national competition where I was awarded with this patent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's it's a big effort to get a U.S. patent, and so we really appreciate you being a Columbus student and a Columbus resident. And so just thought it would be great to have you down to recognize this great accomplishment. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Thank you. Seeing none, I move for adoption.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Adopted.
And that is all I have this evening.
Thank you, council members. I have one resolution, and as I read the resolution, I'd like to invite the Lady Nubians from Columbus Afrocentric, the state champion basketball players, down to the podium. I see our superintendent is here as well, and I think I saw a school board member as well. School board member Cole is here as well. We have celebrities in the house tonight. I am so excited. Yeah. So today I'm excited to introduce Resolution 0074X-2023, and it's to congratulate the Afrocentric Lady Nubian basketball team on winning the 2022 and 2023 Division III State Championship. For those who didn't know, and I told the ladies before council started, I went to Afrocentric, and they were like, when? Really? It was like in the 90s, but I definitely went to Afrocentric. And so thank you just for representing us, not just Afrocentric, but you represented the entire city so well. When I was reading through just some of the stats of your season, I thought that some of your win totals were typos, and they were not. You guys are out there killing it, and we are so, so, so grateful for just the way that you carried yourself, the way that you won. You guys are a great representation of this district, of this city. You are our children, our daughters, and we're so, so proud. And I think the superintendent, by seeing Damien's story and these young ladies, we have so many great stories in Columbus City schools that so often don't get told. And so I appreciate Councilmember Remy for inviting Damien down from Whetstone, and now we get to honor these young ladies for their historic win from Afrocentric. I am just so excited for you guys. I want to turn the podium over to, I don't know who wants to speak. We definitely want to hear you guys introduce yourselves individually, but we have the superintendent and the coach here as well. So any order works.
Thank you. I am Samara Thompson. I'm a junior at Afrocentric Early College.
Congratulations.
I'm Jayana Overby, and I'm a sophomore at Afrocentric Early College.
Congratulations.
I'm Ashton Winfrey. I'm a junior from Afrocentric Early College.
All right.
I'm Janiyah Bowers. I'm a freshman from Afrocentric Early College.
All right.
My name is Rihanna Howe, and I'm a junior.
Y'all can let them cling. It's all
My
right.
name is Shane Little, and I'm a sophomore.
Congratulations.
My name is Natalia Nelson, and I'm a junior.
If y'all had a TikTok battle, they would have probably gave y'all a little more energy. But I am Janisha Anderson, better known as Coach Shaq. I am the head coach at Columbus Afrocentric. I, too, am also a graduate, 2006.
Superintendent, school board member Cole.
Yes, good evening, everyone. President Harden, council members, it is a pleasure and an honor and a privilege to be here with you all tonight to recognize the talent of our Columbus City School students. Our scholars, these girls are amazing, our students are amazing, and it really, really, really resonates with us for us to be here tonight and for our students to receive the recognition from our community so that they know that we see them, we love them, we appreciate them, and we recognize them for their journey on and off the court. So thank you for recognizing their hard work, their effort, and their accomplishment. We are so very appreciative of your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Harden, members of council. Thank you so much this evening for acknowledging our scholar athletes and even our young man that just recently left the podium, for acknowledging excellence in Columbus City schools. This is a sharp representation of what this school district has to offer, and just a legacy that they're following in some of your footsteps at the table right now. So God bless you all. Thank you so much for your work.
Council members, any comments?
I just want to say congratulations. First of all, I know it's hard to be down here, and I know you're acting real shy on this podium. I know you got a lot of fire because obviously that's what took you to the championships. But I know it's difficult to be a student athlete, to juggle everything that you need to juggle your passion along with your studies. And so I just want to commend you and say thank you and congratulations. I can't wait to see what y'all are going to do. We got a freshman on this team? What, already? I mean, how much further do you have to go? So we just, again, just congratulations for all of your accomplishments and keep striving and keep succeeding.
With that, is there a motion for Resolution 0074X? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Congratulations. Are there any announcements from the City Attorney's Office, the Auditor's Office, Madam Auditor? All right. Are there any requests by members of council for the removal of an ordinance or resolution from consent portion of the agenda? Seeing none, may we now have a motion to waive reading of the titles of third-day legislation? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Do we need a,
He
is there a
did-
motion?
he
Okay,
did.
is there a second?
I heard him.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Thank you. Will the clerk now read into the record ordinance numbers of 30-day legislation on tonight's agenda?
Technology Committee, Ordinance 1103-2023, Public Service and Transportation Committee, Resolution 63X-2023, Neighborhoods and Immigrant, Refugee, and Migrant Affairs, Ordinance 1151-2023, Public Utilities Committee, Ordinances 1000, 1058, and 1080-2023, Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committee, Ordinance 1147-2023, Finance Committee, Ordinance 1115, 1150 and 1226-2023, Rules and Reference Committee, ordinances 1016 and 1156-2023, Zoning Committee, ordinances 1192, 1184, and 1200-2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We don't have any speakers. We do not have any speakers on first reading, so the following ordinance appear on our agenda as consent actions. Will the clerk now read those into the record?
Resolutions of expression 75X, 76X, and 80X-2023. Economic Development Committee, Ordinance 1114-2023. Small and Minority Business Committee, Ordinance 1003-2023. Technology Committee, Ordinances 834, 969, 982, 987, 1137-2023. Public Service and Transportation Committee, Ordinances 950, 1045, 1046, 1079-2023. Neighborhoods and Immigrant, Refugee, and Migrant Affairs, Ordinance 1139-2023. Recreation and Parks Committee, Resolution 60X-2023, and ordinances 749, 752, and 825-2023. Public Utilities Committee, Resolution 48X-2023, ordinances 754, 849, 941, 944, 956, 963, 973, 997, 1022, 1029, and 1055-2023. Housing Committee, ordinances 1075 and 1101-2023. Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committee, ordinance 1085-2023. Health and Human Services Committee, ordinances 946, 977, 988, 1014, 1018, 1019, 1061, 1102-2023. Public Safety Committee, ordinance 971-2023. Environment Committee, Ordinance 616-2023. Finance Committee, Ordinances 940, 984, 1036, 1084, and 1140-2023. Appointments from the Mayor's Office numbered A00112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 118, 120, 121, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127-2023.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have one speaker on the consent portion of the agenda. That's Mr. Nate Wilkins. Mr. Wilkins, welcome back to council. Mr. Wilkins is speaking on Housing Ordinance 1075-2023.
Sixteen 12 Arlington Avenue, Mr. Luthan George Wilkins. I'm going to speak in support of this, and only for several reasons. It seemed like we had property in the land bank for quite some time, beginning with the property located at 168 Whitethorn Avenue, holding the land bank. And to my knowledge is, people come to you time after time again for affordable housing, affordable properties and everything. Whitethorn Avenue has been like this through the city of Columbus for quite some time before it came demolition. If we are talking about empty lots, 168 Whitethorn Avenue, it sits as a vacant land. I would like to know what was the reason for this property to be torn down and why it couldn't be fixed up through the city land bank. Is the goal again is to take city-owned property, to tear it down, and most of the time we talk about affordable housing, and it seems like rent has gone up 50% more than it was 10 to 15 years ago. And here, I don't live on the west side of town, but here, if I'm going to support this, I want to see some legal action to take into rebuilding these homes with security cameras on outside the property and safety in place. We seem like we have more land bank property that houses don't stand on. If I'm going to be a supporter of this on the west side of town, we want to make sure building those homes state-of-the-art and bringing these new builds on the west side of town as 90% on the basis of their income. That's also including the homeless population and also for the multiple disability and people that don't work at 40-hour on a job. And so again, I would just like to have more clarification, how long this property has sit like this, what was the timeline, how this property had to be demoed. So again, I'd just like to have those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkins. Director, would you follow up with Mr. Wilkins with the requested information? Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments about the consent portion of the agenda for the directors? Or seeing none, is there a motion to approve these items designated as consent? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bankston,
Yes, with the exception of ordinances 0988, 1061, 1102, 0616-2023, from which I'm abstaining.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Dorans,
Yes.
Ms. Favor,
Yes, with the exception of ordinances 1045, 1079, 977, 1018, 1019, 616, and A0118-2023, from which I'm abstaining.
Mr. Remy.
Yes.
President Harden.
Yes, ordinance are passed with the noted exceptions. We'll now proceed with the second reading of 30-day and table postponed legislation. First committee to come before council is the Technology Committee, chaired by Councilmember Bankston. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. Tonight, for second reading, we have one ordinance in the Technology Committee, Ordinance 0887-2023, to authorize the Director of the Department of Technology to enter into an agreement with OARNet/OSU for VMware software licensing, maintenance, and support pursuant to Columbus City Codes, sections relating to not-for-profit service contracts, to authorize the expenditure of $406,689.34 from the Department of Technology Information Services Operating Fund, and to declare an emergency. This ordinance allows for us to purchase VM software licensing and maintenance support, and through the State of Ohio Virtualization Program, ORNet, offers significant discounts on VMware that are not available in the marketplace. As such, it is the city's best interest to procure VMware through Ornet rather than through another procurement process. The current contract expired on April 1st, 2023, hence the emergency action that is necessary. Heard any questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I move for passage by voice.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Mr. Bangston?
Yes.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans? Ms. Faber? Mr. Remy? President Harden.
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have in my committees this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee to come before council is the Public Service and Transportation Committee. That committee is chaired by Councilmember Barosa de Padilla. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. I have three ordinances this evening in Public Service and Transportation. Ordinance 1030-2023 to authorize the city attorney to file complaints in order to immediately appropriate and accept the remaining fee, simple and lesser real estate necessary to timely complete the miscellaneous developments American Edition Phase 4 project to authorize an expenditure of $12,550 from existing ACDI 001788-10 and to declare an emergency. The City of Columbus has completed phases 2 and 3 of improvements to the historic American Edition neighborhood. Work will upgrade road conditions, add pedestrian safety features, and improve stormwater drainage. The city's acquisition of the real estate will help improve or repair certain portions of the right-of-way of the North Central Planning Area, which will be open to the public without charge. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Faber, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, ordinance 1048-2023 to amend the 2022 capital improvement budget to authorize a transfer of funds within the Streets and Highways Bond Fund and Development Taxable Bonds Fund to appropriate funds within the Street and Highways Improvement Non-Bond Fund. Ooh, these are tongue twisters today. And OPWC Grants and Loans Fund to authorize the Director of Public Service to enter into contract with Shelley and Sands Incorporated for the Bridge Rehab UIRF Milo Grogan 2nd Avenue Improvements Project and to authorize the expenditure of up to $10,085,056.09 from the Streets and Highways Bond Fund, Streets and Highways Improvement Non-Bond Fund, Development Taxable Bonds Fund, and OPWC Grants and Loans Fund for the project, and to repay any unused grant funds at the end of the grant period and to declare an emergency. So this ordinance approves the Director of Public Service to enter into contract with Shelley and Sands and to provide payment for construction administration, and inspection services. This contract is part of a much larger project along 2nd Avenue in the Milo Grogan area. This contract includes the installation of new sidewalks, curb ramps, curb extensions, street trees, permeable paver parking, and new street lighting with underground conduits. This project includes the installation of 2 soldier pile walls and the installation of retaining walls. I'm excited about this project in Milo Grogan. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, Faber, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Ordinance 1077-2023 to authorize the Director of the Department of Finance and Management to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation, or ODOT, and yet to be named vendors for the purchase of rock salt based on the terms of a cooperative purchase contract to be established by ODOT to authorize the Director of Finance and Management to establish purchase orders for rock salt, to authorize the expenditure of up to $1,100,000 from the Municipal Motor Vehicles License Tax Fund, up to $13,376 from the Sewerage Systems Operating Fund, and up to $64,240 from the Water Systems Operating Fund, and up to $4,400 from the Electricity Systems Operating Fund for the purchase of rock salt. To authorize the Director of Finance and Management to associate all general budget reservations resulting from this ordinance with the appropriate contract purchase agreement for rock salt and to declare an emergency. The Department of Public Service and the Department of Public Utilities are responsible for snow and ice control and removal on the city's roadway system, and removing snow and ice. The department uses rock salt extensively, and this is necessary for the 2023-2024 winter season. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Pass.
Council President, can I move to neighborhoods, immigrant, refugee, and migrant affairs?
Please.
Great, so I would like to go back to the consent agenda on page 4. Ordinance 1151, 2023, to authorize the city clerk to enter into a grant agreement with Your Life Has Possibilities for the support of the Stop Summer Slide Summer Camp, and to authorize an appropriation and expenditure within the Neighborhood Initiative Subfund. Stop the Summer Slide Summer Camp is an academically based camp that focuses on the Common Core reading standards for grades K through 5 that helps students to continue their learning over the summer. Stop the Summer Slide Summer Camp has the following goals for all camp participants. Students in K through 3rd grade are exposed to academic learning through instruction in the areas of reading, math, science, and social studies. Literacy is in all content areas of learning. Students in grades 1 through 5th experience extended learning opportunities through field trips, and students in grades 1 through 5th also explore math and science through cross-curricular lessons. I would like to hand it over to my colleagues, Councilmember Favor, Bangston, and Remy, if there's anything that you would like to add. I know you helped to champion this legislation, Councilmember.
Thank you, Councilmember Barosa de Padilla. It has been an honor for me to advocate on behalf of the Stop the Summer Slide Summer Camp, which has already been acknowledged. The summer slide is a decline in the reading ability and other academic skills that can occur over the summer months, which can absolutely be detrimental to students' learning and widens the achievement gap between students of lower and higher socioeconomic levels. Often preventing the summer slide is left to the students' parents, but for many of our families between busy schedules and other activities, it's just not an option. Summer programs and camps like Stop the Summer Slide, which focus on students in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, help create equity and opportunities for ongoing growth and learning throughout the summer months. This is an important piece of legislation for our youth and for our communities in order to continue to help them thrive. I'd like to thank Council members Remy and Bangston for their support on this incredible piece of legislation. I'm not sure if either of you have any additional remarks, but thank you for your support on this effort. I'll turn it back over to Councilmember Barosa de Padilla.
So thank you, Councilmember Favor. I think the theme of this meeting, if there was one, was about investing in our young people, right? From sports to academics, how we continue to invest in our young people and provide opportunities for them to succeed is crucial to our collective future. So thank you for championing this piece of legislation. Now I request to waive second reading.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Waive.
And now I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Congratulations. Oh, that's it for me now.
You're good. The next committee to come before council is the Public Utilities Committee, chaired by Pres Pro Tem Doran. Pres Pro Tem, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President. In Public Utilities Committee, we have Ordinance 0865-2023 to authorize the Director of Finance and Management to associate all general budget reservations resulting from this ordinance with the appropriate universal term contract purchase agreement for light-duty trucks for the Division of Sewers and Drainage with George Byers Sons, Inc. to authorize the transfer of $18,000 between object classes and the Stormwater Operating Fund and to authorize the expenditure of $817,100 from the Sewerage System Operating Fund and $234,000 from the Stormwater Operating Fund and declare an emergency. These trucks are vital to the day-to-day operations of the Division of Sewers and Drainage, hence this ordinance being submitted as emergency due to rising costs, shortened ordering window, and long lead times for equipment delivery. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next committee coming before council is the Housing Committee. Councilmember Favor chairs that committee. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Tonight in the Housing Committee, we have Ordinance 917-2023 to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of up to $760,000 of the 2021 and 2022 Home Investment Partnerships Program entitlement grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and to enter into a commitment letter, loan agreement, promissory note, mortgage, and restrictive covenant with Healthy Rental Homes 7 LLC to construct single-family and duplex rental homes in an amount up to $760,000 and to declare an emergency. Healthy Homes is an affordable housing developer focused on increasing the stock of high-quality housing options available to families earning no more than 80% of the area median income on Columbus's south side. Healthy Rental Homes 7 LLC seeks to further address the housing affordability issues that Columbus is facing by developing 11 units of new construction and 2 units of rehab construction rental housing. These properties will consist of infill development designed to replace residential structures that have been demolished and rehabilitate 2 existing structures. The 13 rental units will consist of 3 single-family homes and 5 duplexes. Additionally, the families who will reside in these units will have access to a variety of supportive services and advocacy opportunities. Emergency action is being requested to allow for the developer to maintain the project schedule on budget. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? Seeing none, I'd move for passage.
Clerk, please call the
By
roll.
voice.
By voice.
Mr. Bangston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Favor?
Yes.
Mr. Remy? President Harden?
Yes. Ordinance is passed.
Thank you. May I move on to criminal justice and judiciary?
Please.
Tonight in criminal justice and judiciary, we have ordinance 1135-2023 to authorize and direct the city attorney to settle the lawsuit known as Karen James, administrator of the estate of Daniel Ronald James versus the city of Columbus, case number 21CV-1556, pending in the Court of Common Pleas of Franklin County, Ohio, to authorize the expenditure of the sum of $1,100,000.00 in settlement of this lawsuit and to declare an emergency. On March 11th, 2021, the plaintiff, Karen James, refiled a lawsuit in the Court of Common Pleas of Franklin County, Ohio, against the city of Columbus, Byron Owens, and Christopher Mattingly, in which she claimed the paramedics failed to properly treat and transport her husband, Daniel James. She alleges the failure of the paramedics to treat and transport Mr. James resulted in his death. Emergency action is requested for this ordinance to be effective immediately in order for the parties to effectuate the settlement of this lawsuit in accordance with the terms of the settlement agreement, which is in the best interest of the city. We are joined by our Assistant City Attorney here today. Would you like to make any additional comments this evening?
Council President Harden, Councilmember Favor, members, thank you. Obviously, this case is tragic. This is a large sum of money that we are.
Hold on. Your mic.
There we go. Sorry about that. This is a tragic case. There is no question about that. Unfortunate situation where paramedics went to the scene and did not transport an individual who ended up dying the next day. Obviously, we're asking the council to expend a very large sum of money, but we believe it is in the best interests of everybody that by reaching a settlement agreement in this case, we are actually potentially saving the city even more. If a jury were to look at the facts of the case, we believe that, we don't know where a decision may come back on that. I know also, I believe Deputy Director Speaks is also here and can actually address this situation.
Do any of my colleagues have any question for our City Attorney's Office? Director Speaks, do you have any remarks you'd like to make at this time?
Thank you, Chairperson Favor, President Harden, members of council. Let me first state that our Columbus Division of Fire paramedics are some of the finest in the nation. Last year, they responded to 145,650 emergency calls for service, and they transported 77,747 patients to our area hospitals. In my many years of service to the city, I have rarely encountered a case in which our paramedics did not provide outstanding service. However, that is not the case here. Mistakes were made on December 9th, 2017, which contributed to the death of Mr. Danny James. In short, our medics were negligent in failing to transport Mr. James to the hospital in order to obtain greater medical care. Since 2017, Chief Happ and Dr. Lowe, who is our EMS physician and medical director, have instituted a multitude of EMS quality assurance and review policies, procedures, and trainings for continuous improvement and adherence to national best practices. I would now ask Chief Happ and Dr. Lowe to come up and address this case, as well as highlight some of the many EMS continuous quality improvement processes that I believe will greatly mitigate the chance of a repeat of the tragic incidents of December 9th, 2017.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen.
Council President Harden and members of council, I want to personally offer my sincerest apologies to the James family for their loss. I had the opportunity to meet Mrs. James and talk with her several months back. While there is nothing I can say to ease the pain that their family was going through, please understand this incident is not indicative of what Columbus firefighters, paramedics are all about. I assure you we strive to do our very best every single day to provide the best care for the residents of this great city. The Columbus Division of Fire is committed to providing continuous medical review to ensure that we are delivering the safest and highest quality of pre-hospital care. EMS quality oversight and assurance remains our evolving process. I would like to invite Dr. Lowe to add a few comments to it at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, President Harden. I first want to echo the comments of Fire Chief Happ and Deputy Director Speaks. We are profoundly sorry for the events that led to the James family's loss, and we recognize the need to do better. The Columbus Division of Fire has a continuous quality improvement, or a CQ office, and a process. And over the last several years, we've worked diligently to refine and mature the CQI functions we undertake. Under the current leadership structure, we have elevated the uniform supervision of that office to the level of a battalion chief, and we've added additional physician oversight hours in the form of an assistant medical director. Healthcare is hard. Humans caring for humans is hard. It's especially hard in the out-of-hospital, stress-induced, time-critical, and often challenging conditions. Not unexpectedly, there is a potential for error. However, the goal of a good quality review and prevention program is to mitigate the chance of error occurring, and should error occur, the chance of it having negative impacts on the patient. Specifically at the Columbus Division of Fire, we've been transitioning from what we call a reactive process to a proactive process. What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, when errors are made, we obviously look to intervene and to correct those errors immediately. However, if we are simply waiting for large problems or errors to occur, that is by definition a passive approach and somewhat reactive. Our goal with these changes has been and will continue to be a focus on the identification of smaller errors, if you will allow me to say, opportunities for improvement in training, for improvement in education, for improvement in re-education, just the overall refinement with the goal of preventing larger problems occurring downstream. Probably the most relatable example I can give to you is our desire to be more aligned with the airline industry's approach to safety. The ability to identify concerns and near misses makes it a very safe industry. This weekend, Columbus was witness to a commercial airline flight with a significant engine failure issue, and yet a safe outcome was achieved. This demonstrates the hallmark of aviation safety, where knowledge gained from previous failures leads to better preparation, better design, and better training. The CFD proactive process aspires to build a similarly robust system to reduce the possibility of harm reaching individuals or patients. At CFD, we use a variety of methods for our problem identification, from automated run reviews, from automated data collection, numerous individuals doing sampled run reviews and chart reviews. We separately focus on high-risk procedures, medication usages. We've developed tracking methods to better quantify our systems issues, but also to look for those reoccurrences that may happen as well. We have a focus on training and refinement of documentation procedures, and as illustrated in this case, refusal procedures. It's important work we have done, but please know that we take very seriously the charge that we should be continually improving and continually striving for better care. We look to further expand the capabilities and resources of the CQI office in staffing, in structure, and in process improvement. We're working to develop a system of incident reporting whereby reports can be made of concerns or incidents or potential problems, again, before they rise to the level of bad outcome. We have begun initial work on opportunities to revamp and restructure our call taking and dispatching software, building on processes to improve and better align our patients' needs with the resources sent to their aid. And we are continuing looking to improve our delivery of education and knowledge updates to ensure our providers remain leaders in pre-hospital care. Thank you.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments for any of the presentations this evening? Well, I'd like to, the chief made a statement that I believe it was the chief that said humans caring for humans will inevitably, there will be errors that will occur. These settlements are some of the worst moments for me personally, sitting in this seat as a council member, because we understand that generally it is due to some grave error that a fellow employee has taken. And our hearts go out to the families of the individual who lost their life through the situation. I appreciate the detailed report this evening of the proactive steps that have been taken to ensure that this never happens in the city of Columbus, or it's at least mitigated as much as possible in the future. I appreciate that. Seeing no additional questions or comments at this time, I would move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row on ordinance 1152, 2023.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
It is passed.
Thank you. Next, we have
1135.
1135, my apologies.
No, you're good.
To authorize and direct the city attorney to settle. Hold on. My apologies. 1152-2023. To authorize and direct the city attorney to settle the lawsuit. Did I read the wrong?
I think it's 1135, Council.
1135.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The lawsuit known as Lucy Sanez, administrator of the estate of Deborah Sanez, versus Matthew Caldwell, case number 21CV4224, pending in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas, to authorize the expenditure of the sum of $600,000.00 and settlement of this lawsuit and $176 in court costs, and to declare an emergency. On July 11, 2019, Columbus police officers Matthew Caldwell, John Cody, Todd Egan, Sean Noltemeyer, and Rodney Reed, collectively defendant officers, responded to Deborah Sanez's apartment on a call for domestic violence. The defendant officers did not arrest Marcos Solis III. After the defendant officers left Deborah Sanez's apartment on July 2019, Columbus's Emergency Communications Center received a 911 hang-up call from Deborah Sanez's phone number. Emergency dispatcher Laura Thomas did not air that 911 hang-up call over the police radio. The next morning, on July 12, 2019, Marcos Solis III shot and killed Deborah Sanez. The plaintiff alleges, among other things, that A, defendants were willful, wanton, and/or reckless under Ohio law; B, as a direct and proximate result of the defendant's conduct, Deborah Sanchez was shot and killed by Marcus Solis III. And C, Deborah Sanchez, as well as her family and next of kin, suffered damages. Emergency action is requested for this ordinance to be effective immediately in accordance with the terms of the settlement of this lawsuit, which is in the best interest of the city. I'm going to turn the podium over again to the city attorney's office to make any additional remarks at this time.
Council President, Councilmember Favor, members of council. Again, we are dealing with a situation that is obviously riddled with error, despite best training, best efforts, and everything else. This is a situation where mistakes were made. Somebody is dead because of it. These cases, when one evaluates them, are incredibly difficult because you put yourself in the position of thinking, what would a jury do in a situation where a 911 call was made, hung up, after a situation where there was a domestic violence situation, felon in possession of guns. I know we've been over here talking to council a lot about domestic violence, about guns. This was a situation that things were missed. With that said, again, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Director Speaks to kind of talk a little bit more about specifics.
Well, before we do that, since we do have two pretty large settlements here that are being brought to us by the city attorney's office, and without compromising the integrity of the settlement, can you discuss why the city attorney's office at this time has made the recommendation to settle this case?
This was, I believe this one was the result of mediation, or was it? Yes. This was through a mediation that was done, and a tentative agreement was reached in that mediation. So that's why we're here right now with this one.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Director Speaks.
Thank you, Chairperson Favor, President Harden, members of council. On July 12, 2019, Deborah Sanchez was fatally shot by Marcus Solis III. For that heinous crime, Mr. Solis was sentenced to a maximum sentence of 25.5 years in prison. The day before that tragic shooting, Columbus officers, who are the defendants in this case, responded to the residence of Ms. Sanchez and Mr. Solis. They were there because of a domestic violence 911 call placed by Mrs. Sanchez. The officers failed to complete a proper investigation, and they failed to properly communicate and share information with one another. Most notably, the officers failed to perform a criminal background check on Mr. Solis, and they failed to discover any handguns. For this inadequate investigation and failure to communicate with one another, the officers were disciplined. 10 minutes after the officers left the residence, Ms. Sanchez called 911 again, but she hung up. It is the 911 policy that when a hang-up is received out of a domestic violence call, then the 911 operator will air that to the officers who just left the scene. However, in this case, the operator failed to air that hang-up. She was also, the operator was also disciplined for that failure. Let me underscore, we do not know, and we will never know, what would have happened had the officers been more diligent. A jury could have found it was reasonably foreseeable that if a thorough investigation had taken place, that the officers would have had probable cause to arrest Mr. Solis and possibly find and confiscate the handguns. In other words, a proper and thorough investigation may have prevented the tragic murder of Ms. Sanchez. If such a jury verdict occurred, then the city would have been found liable for far more significant sum than the settlement here tonight. On the other hand, a jury could have found that the inadequate investigation of the officers on July 11th of 2019 paled in comparison to Mr. Solis' heinous act the next day on July 2019. In that case, under Ohio's comparative negligence statute, a jury verdict awarding damages would have been greatly decreased, or perhaps even totally barred. Given this uncertainty, the parties, utilizing a mediator, reached a mutually agreeable settlement, which is now before you. With a heavy heart, I respectfully recommend the passage of this ordinance in order to settle this wrongful death case. I'm happy to answer any questions. Likewise, if I cannot answer a question, Chief Bryant and Deputy Chief Weiner are also here. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues at this time? Yes, Councilmember Bankston.
Thank you, Councilmember Favor. And I think you asked this as a consistent question, but given that in both of these cases, there was clearly human error, right? And so when that happens, I think we look at the individual situation in the person, but also in this particular case, have we also done a thorough review of just our policies and procedures just to make sure that there's not something in the policy or procedure that could have lended to these officers and others actually, catching that?
Councilman Bakes, unlike the prior EMS case, I do not believe that it was a failure of policy. Rather, it was a failure of officers to adhere to an existing policy and a lack of communication amongst the officers at the time.
Thank you for that. And also thank you for the thorough report that, these officers, as well as the 911 dispatcher, was disciplined. I think there's no level of discipline, no level of money that can bring back someone's life, and this is tragic. And just want to underscore to the community that this is rare and that human error does happen, unfortunately, in these types of scenarios. And so just want to send our condolences to the family, but also wanting the public to understand that we know that there is nothing that we can do to bring that person back. But what we have to balance as being stewards of taxpayer dollars is the implication or the thought that this could be a much greater settlement or dollar amount if taken to court. So that is why that vote has to be taken by us on this dais, and why there's not much necessarily dialogue from us, because again, we have to balance making sure that we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, but also understanding that this is a tragedy that nothing that we do will be able to suffice or bring justice to those families. So I just want to make sure I uplift that, and thank you, Councilmember Favor, for your leadership and on all of these tough things when they come our way.
Absolutely. Councilmember Barosa de Padilla.
I do want to put a finer point on the point that Councilmember Bankston raised is even if we didn't follow procedures, I think, especially in domestic violence cases where it feels more complex for a variety of issues, my wonder is, have we reviewed those policies once a situation like this happens? Do we make improvements to those? I know that Chief Bryant is here, and I don't know if you want to address that specifically, but I just want to understand what that process looks like. Because I do understand that, we've heard stories like this before of domestic violence situations in particular.
Thank you, President Harden and Council. We absolutely look at our policies and procedures, and we make sure that we are constantly reviewing them for any improvements that we can make. This particular incident, just like they talked about, the officers failed to do an assessment. So that was not something that was a policy issue, that was an officer issue, but some of the things that we are doing moving forward to ensure that we have those checks and balances is we are reorganizing. We're making sure that we have more supervision available to be able to respond to incidents. We're making sure that we are looking at those officers and checking to make sure those reports are correct, making sure that they're doing the things they're supposed to do. Those checks and balances are important for us to ensure that we're doing that. And you got to understand, we're looking at how many runs, domestic violence runs a day? A lot. Unfortunately, that is the majority of our runs. So it's important for us to make sure that we're backing those officers up. And when we look at our reorganization and we look at our accountability all the way from police officer all the way up to chief, we have those checks and balances in place to make sure that we're looking at that to mitigate as much as we can anything that we may miss.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Any additional questions or comments at this time? Yes, Council President Harden.
Thank you, Chair, and Chief, you hit on what I was wanting to raise, that, there's been conversation about a little bit spike in violence, and a lot of that is being driven specifically by domestic DV cases. My last ride-along that I did early this year, late last year, we had a domestic violence run in the middle of the night. They are difficult. They are difficult, and that's not to make any excuse at all. But could you talk just about this spike, what we are seeing? Because we have a larger societal problem going on right now as well. And I really think that we have to raise that as well, because some of this stuff you can't police your way out of either.
Absolutely. So we are seeing a huge spike, not only just in domestic violent runs, but even in domestic violence homicides. So we've already had year-to-date 8 domestic violence homicides, and last year, for the entire year, we only had 7, and we're in April, and we're already up to 8. So the increase in our domestic violence is very alarming to us, and so we're trying to figure out how we can work with other agencies, with the city officials, with different people, to make sure that we're addressing it as best as we can on our end, because we don't want to react. We want to be proactive in these situations when we see something that we may be able to save someone before it gets to that point.
Thank you, Chief. And let me be clear, we're separating this incident where we erred as the police officers, but with this larger societal issue. And I think this is where us as a legislative body have to dig a little bit deeper to see what are those relationships, what are those partnerships that we can have in the community with social service agencies that can help mitigate this. So I just appreciate you raising this increase, and we look forward to partnering with you and anyone else out there who can help us reverse this trend and do so immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I think it's, I also want to be very clear that, tonight we have heard about human error that's connected to our emergency service providers, our 911 operators, our police officers. We know that our first responders have such an incredible responsibility to ensure the health and safety of all of Columbus's residents. But today, we do have to take the time to dive into the policies and the procedures that led us to these 2 large settlements here today. And so on one hand, I want to say thank you to our first responders, but I also want to acknowledge and provide my sincerest condolences to the families and the loved ones that have lost their loved one because of the human error today. And so in the spirit of that, I, with a heavy heart, do move for passage at this time.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Can I move on to Health and Human Services?
Get started. Yes, please.
First, I'd like to kick it over to Councilmember Barosa de Padilla to read Ordinance 759-2023.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. Favor. Ordinance 0759-2023 to authorize the Board of Health to modify an existing contract with The Ohio State University for the provision of technical assistance services for the period of September 30th, 2022 through September 29th, 2023, to authorize the expenditure of $45,000 from the Health Department Grants Fund to pay the cost thereof and to declare an emergency. The Columbus Public Health is participating in the STD Surveillance Network program to better understand behavioral, demographic, and clinical information on gonorrhea cases. This information will allow CPH and the CDC to better understand the epidemiology of STDs and to inform national and local STD prevention efforts. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage by voice.
Clerk, please call the row by voice.
Mr. Bangston,
Yes.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Dorans,
Yes.
Ms. Favor,
Abstain.
Mr. Remy,
Yes.
President Harden.
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you, and I give it back to Chair Favor.
Thank you, Council Member. Next, we have ordinance 866-2023 to authorize the Board of Health to enter into a contract with the Research Institute at Nationwide Children's Hospital for the provision of services allowable under the grant for persons with HIV or AIDS in Central Ohio, to authorize the board to modify the budget of this contract for the sole purpose of reallocating funds amongst the vendors in the same program without the need for additional legislation, to authorize the expenditure of $86,029 from the Health Department Grants Fund to pay the cost thereof and to declare an emergency. The City of Columbus, Columbus Public Health receives funding for the Ending the HIV Epidemic Grant Program from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration. The purpose of the grant program is to focus resources in jurisdictions with substantial HIV burden to implement strategies, interventions, approaches, and core medical and support services to reduce new HIV infections in the United States. This ordinance authorizes the Board of Health to enter into a contract with the Research Institute at Nationwide Children's Hospital to deliver the ending of the HIV epidemic services, including but not limited to health education, risk reduction, and EHE, health insurance navigation, to achieve viral suppression for individuals living with HIV and any other services allowable under the grant. Are there any questions or comments by my colleagues? Seeing none, I'd move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Mr. Bangston? Ms. Barosa de Padilla? Mr. Brown? Mr. Dorans?
Yes.
Ms. Faber?
Yes.
Mr. Remy?
Yes.
President Harden?
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you. I will now turn it back over to Councilmember Rosa de Padilla for the next two ordinances.
Thank you, Chair Faber. So before I start this ordinance, I just want to give a little bit of background. A couple weeks ago, we put this ordinance on hold. We're bringing it back up, so I just want to center us on this ordinance has to do with Latitude 525 Towers and the residents that once occupied this property. On Christmas Day, bursting pipes resulted in water damage, which resulted in the immediate evacuation of 154 households. Now, this was a property that we knew was in a fragile state from beforehand because of negligence from the property owners. Unfortunately, because of the spike in cold weather, we took a fragile piece of real estate. Unfortunately, these pipes burst, and we saw that we needed to evacuate residents. We moved them into a emergency shelter at Dodge Recreation Center for several days following the event. Due to the extensive nature of the repairs needed in the towers, residents were not allowed to move back in, and at that point were not allowed to go back in to get their belongings either. The City of Columbus, along with Franklin County, has come together to supply different ordinances and different pots of money that would go to community-based organizations, including the Community Shelter Board and the Wells Foundation, funding to help with relocation costs for these residents. So we provided upwards of $765,000, another $548,000 that went towards security deposits, application fees, rental assistance for up to 6 months. So that's where we currently are. We're going to talk about the legislation tonight and how we are further supporting residents. But before we do that, I want to first start with Director Messer. If we could start with, if you could give us just a little bit of, we are in litigation with the entity that owns the building known as PAX, and I don't know if we want to start with you and go to City Attorney to just tell us where we are currently in litigation with the entity known as PAX, and then I have some follow-up questions. So.
Sure. I can tell you that, as a lot of you probably know, there was the Environmental Court of Franklin County did find PAX to be in contempt of several court orders that predated that finding. Those were out of several building and code enforcement violations that we filed. So they had a $2.5 million fine that was put into place, although the owners then filed for bankruptcy, and those fines have been stayed and have not been able to be collected. Right now, we're working with PAX to focus on getting residents their possessions as much as we possibly can, relocating the residents, and still working with several problems that we're having in the buildings, such as the elevators being out of commission and things like that.
Thank you. City Attorney's Office, is there anything that you would like to add to?
Sure. Director Messer is correct. The only additional things I will add is that today we did have a status conference before Judge Holbrook in the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas with regard to the foreclosure hearing. So there are 3 different court cases going on simultaneously involved with Latitude 525. One being the environmental court action, which Director Messer talked about with regard to the physical conditions of the property, and whereby the owners were fined or levied a $2.5 million fine to be paid to the tenants. That is being stayed by the bankruptcy action that was filed right after the contempt order came down from the environmental court. So there's a Chapter 11 bankruptcy that is currently going on that has stayed all other actions against Pax Latitude as a debtor. And there's also the foreclosure case that was filed by the lender as part of the environmental action. So because they were not paying their mortgage, but also maintaining a public nuisance, that gave the lender the opportunity to file foreclosure against the mortgage that they currently had. So we are exploring other ways to move forward despite the automatic stay that the bankruptcy puts in place here in the environmental court, as well as in the foreclosure action. More to come on that. After the bankruptcy, Pax Latitude also filed a motion in the environmental court for relief of judgment. We filed our responses to that in April of this year. We will have a motion hearing in May. So that date is set for May 24th on those motions in the environmental court. And then the next hearing for the bankruptcy action is actually scheduled for Wednesday of this week.
Do my colleagues have questions about the litigation piece of this? No? Thank you. Thank you for that thorough update. Now, I want to move over to the Department of Development. And Director Harris, could you give us a status update on just the rehousing of individuals and their families? What is the process that folks have gone through? How have we prioritized that? And just a general status of where our residents are now.
Yes, Council Member. As of April 18th, we have identified 131 households, have identified new housing of the tenants that were there, and 110 move-ins are completed and scheduled. We are prioritizing pregnant mothers, seniors, and those with health issues in that prioritization. And if you are a resident at Latitude 525 and have not been contacted by Rosetta Brown, please call 614-421-6333.
And Assistant Director, if we're looking at those numbers, are those other families that have not been housed, are they in process, or is that because they found housing? Where might those folks be?
Yes, the remainder are in various stages. There are a few residents who have either left the state or have moved in with other family members. The remaining members are in various stages of getting relocated, and we are working with them to find them housing as well.
And are any of them still in the hotels where we provided the temporary housing, or have they moved on to other spaces?
I'll have to confirm that, but I think there are still a few.
Okay. Do my colleagues have additional questions about where residents are now? Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and read the ordinance and then give a little bit of context for where these funds are going. So Ordinance 1021-2023 to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of an amount not to exceed $230,000 from the Neighborhood Economic Development Fund, and to authorize the appropriation and expenditure of an amount not to exceed $35,000 from the General Fund Neighborhood Initiative Subfund, to authorize the Director of the Department of Development or designee to execute a grant agreement with the Tony R. Wells Foundation, doing business as the Wells Foundation, in an amount not to exceed $265,000 to provide a one-time cash payment and furniture directly to each leaseholder that was displaced from the Latitude 525 apartment complex on December 25th, 2022, and to pay for expenses incurred before the purchase order was approved, and to declare an emergency. The city is in the process of rehousing tenants, and there's an immediate need for access to flexible resources that allows these households to reestablish themselves in their new units and purchase the household items that they need that were forced to leave behind on Christmas Day. These will be a one-time direct cash payment to the leaseholders who once resided at Latitude 525 525 on Christmas Day. Payment amounts will be determined by household size and an estimate of monthly expenses as determined by FEMA and the IRS. Direct cash transfer programs give recipients much-needed flexibility. Even when recipients have access to typical assistance, they face challenges to using benefits. With cash payment programs, individuals can determine what costs to cover to best suit their most urgent needs and most efficiently reach housing stability. So this is a one-time payment that will go directly to residents that is set up through the structure, through FEMA and the IRS, that will allow residents to fill in whatever gaps that they may have. So while we've provided them with assistance with housing, that we know that folks left furniture behind, they left clothing behind, important documents. This will help to close that gap for residents. And while we know that this will not replace all of their belongings, certainly not maybe treasured mementos or other things that folks lost in the building, this is certainly a move towards trying to care for our people and for their families. So do my colleagues have any other questions or comments they would like to share?
I just want to say thank you to specifically City Attorney Ross, to the Development Department, so many others throughout the city and the county who stacked hands. I was on the phone several times Christmas Day with folks. I know council members were physically there at Latitude, but this is such a complex issue with this specific place, and what we all just have to remember is that these are people. These are people, and there have been a couple steps along the way where it's kind of less than humane in terms of the situations in which they've been in. Specifically, now we're dealing with asbestos, and folks can't go back into their place to get their belongings. So put yourself in their shoes, where you have all your belongings in their house. You can talk to somebody who might be able to go through your things and safely bring your stuff out. But the truth is that a lot of it will not be able to be brought out. And so these type of efforts led by the city and the county are trying to mitigate that, to bring some level of humanity. And this thing that Councilmember Barosa de Padilla is talking about, giving them direct cash options, is one of those things that helps to allow them to have some level of agency over their next steps. So just grateful for a lot of hard work that has gone into this, and and truthfully, we have to think bigger about this issue, because we probably can count on one hand a couple of other complexes who are teetering on the edge like this one. And so I've been pushing our team to think about processes and procedures for when the next time something like this happens. So just thank you for leading this legislation. Thank you again, City Attorney Ross, and the Development Department, and all those who have helped over the last several months.
Thank you, Council President. And we would be remiss if we did not include the number of community-based organizations, community leaders, individuals that reached out to the residents of Latitude 525, whether they knew them or they did not know them. I mean, I think that this was the best of us coming together as a community to rally around those residents. And I think, the big question now is how do we move into the proactive state so we can be proactive about caring for folks, so we don't get to this place again and that no one has to feel this, right? It's one thing for it to be weather-related or, God forbid, a fire or something else. It's different when it's the negligence of people. So with that, I move to amend as submitted to clerk.
Second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bangston?
Yes.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans? Yes. Ms. Faber? Mr. Remy? Yes. President Harden?
Yes, amended.
And now I move for passage by voice.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bangston?
Yes.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Dorans? Yes. Ms. Faber? Mr. Remy? Yes. President Harden?
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you.
We should probably go ahead and call, is there a motion to recess? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
We will reconvene for zoning in 5 minutes. Okay. Roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Can I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal?
Second.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
Are there any additions or corrections to the journal? Hearing none, the journal is approved. We'll now go to the zoning committee. Councilmember Dorans chairs that committee. All members serve on it. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Council President Harden. Before we begin tonight's zoning agenda, allow me to again briefly explain our current rules pertaining to speaking before council on rezoning and variances. We will only hear a staff presentation for ordinances that have a disapproval from a recommending body, or if we have public speakers signed up to speak against an ordinance. This evening, we've received 0 public speaker slips. All speakers in the council variance, including city staff, area commissioners, applicants, and members of the public, will be sworn in before they give testimony. Representative of an area commission and applicants are always able to speak on an ordinance and do not need to fill out a speaker slip. On the advice of the City Attorney's Office, I will now swear in city staff. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer the pains or penalty of perjury? If so, please say I do. Thank you. Please let the record reflect that Tim Dietrich from the Department of Building and Zoning Services and Dan Bleschmidt from the Department of Public Service have been sworn in. First, we have ordinance 0525-2023 to rezone 161 East Campus View Boulevard, being 2.01 plus acres located in the southeast corner of East Campus View Boulevard and High Cross Boulevard, from CPD Commercial Plan Development District to CPD Commercial Plan Development District. The applicant is Skilkin Gold Development, LLC, care of Mike Shannon. Proposed use is fuel sales, convenience store, and eating and drinking establishment. The city's department recommendation is disapproval. The Development Commission recommendation is approval. The Far North Columbus Community Coalition's recommendation is also approval. Due to the disapproval by city staff, we will now have a staff presentation. Mr. Dietrich, the floor is yours.
Chair Dorans, President Harden, members of council, the site consists of one parcel developed with a former eating and drinking establishment in the CPD Commercial Plan Development District. The requested CPD Commercial Plan Development District will allow the site to be redeveloped with a fuel sales facility, including an eating and drinking establishment, convenience store with a drive-in window service, and minimal outdoor display. The development text permits most C4 and C5 uses, commits to a site plan, and includes development standards addressing setbacks, site access, landscaping, building design, lighting, and graphics provisions. The site is within the planning boundaries of the Far North Area Plan, which recommends employment center land uses at this location, which supports uses such as office, warehouse, or light industrial. The Planning Division is not supportive of this proposal as it is inconsistent with the plan's recommendation. Although Planning Division staff notes that the use will provide 35 to 50 jobs and serve as an amenity to other employment center uses, staff do not support the use as it represents an expansion of existing amenities and is inconsistent with the employment center goal of optimizing job creation in new developments. Staff would reconsider support if the use were part of a larger proposal that includes office or light industrial as the primary user. Planning Division staff also encourages parking being hidden to the greatest extent possible, consistent with plan design guidelines. Therefore, City Department's recommendation is disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Dietrich. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for the department at this point? Seeing none, I'd ask the applicant's attorney, Mr. Mike Shannon, to come forward for a presentation. Mr. Shannon, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Mike Shannon on behalf of the applicant. As articulated by Tim, we did have approval of all the regulatory agencies with the exception of the Division of Planning. We did have approval from the Area Commission by a 9-1 vote and a unanimous approval from Development Commission. Planning was sticking to their protocol to the extent the area plan designates this as an employment center opportunity. The commission, as well as the Far North Columbus Communities Coalition, was swayed by the fact that we are providing between 35 and 40 jobs at this location with a payroll in excess of $1 million. We did additional buffering and handled some of the exterior amenities to the satisfaction of the commission. For these reasons, we respectfully request your approval, and again would highlight the fact that really planning was going by what the plan recommended in terms of an employment center, but the Civic Association impacted by that plan supported this, as did the Development Commission. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for the applicant at this point? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, as whenever we have a disapproval from any recommending body, especially internally in the city, my office works to resolve that disapproval as much as we possibly can. You know, in this instance, while there's a disapproval from planning, again, their point of not wanting to deviate from the area plan, which calls for a job center, given the current condition of the property and certainly prospects moving in the future, it did seem like this does make sense for us to move forward with at this point. So at this point, I would, do my colleagues have any questions or comments at this time? Seeing none, I first move to amend as submitted to clerk.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Amended.
And next, I move for passage as amended.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 1144-2023 to grant a variance provisions of section 3332.029 SR Suburban Residential District of the Columbus City Codes to the property located at 944 Benz Boulevard to permit a 2-unit dwelling in the SR Suburban Residential District. The applicant is Stephanie Reiser. Proposed use of a 2-unit dwelling. City's Department recommendation is approval. The Greater Hilltop Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
Thank you. Next, I move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
And finally, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. Next, we have ordinance 1145-2023 to grant a variance provisions of section 3332.035, R3 Residential District, 3312.49, minimum number of parking space required, and 3332.05A4, area district lot width requirements of the Columbus City Codes to the property located at 1136 East 22nd Avenue to permit a 2-unit dwelling with reduced development standards in the R3 Residential District. The applicant is Jennifer Madiga. Proposed use of a 2-unit dwelling. City's Department recommendation is approval. South Linden Area Commission's recommendation is also approval. I first move to accept the entire staff report into evidence as an exhibit.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Accept it.
Thank you. Next, I move to adopt the findings of staff as the findings of council.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Adopt it.
And finally, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you, Council President. That's all we have in tonight's zoning committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. See no further business coming before the zoning committee. Is there a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Borough City, Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Meeting is adjourned.
Good job, Kevin. Keep them coming.
Is there a motion to reconvene meeting number 20? Clerk, please call the roll.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy. President Harden.
We'll return to the Health and Human Service Committee where Councilmember Favor is chair.
Thank you. I believe one more ordinance. Handing it back to you. Ordinance 1100-2023 to authorize and direct the Board of Health to enter into contracts with the following vendors: Columbus Neighborhood Health Center, doing business as Primary One, Heart of Ohio Health Center, Family Health Centers, Lower Lights Christian Health Center Incorporated, Southeast Incorporated, The Ohio State University College of Nursing, the Lutheran Social Services of Central Ohio to provide primary health care and dental services at community-based health centers, and to authorize the expenditure of $4,289,110 from the Health Special Revenue Fund and to declare an emergency. This ordinance authorizes the Board of Health to enter into contracts to provide primary health care and dental services at community-based health centers for the period of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. Community health centers, CHCs, are successful, low-cost options for primary care access in a nation that spends $2 trillion a year on health care. Medical costs for CHC patients are 41% lower compared to patients seen elsewhere as a hospital, such as a hospital emergency room. As a result, CHC saves the healthcare system between $9.9 million and $17.6 billion a year. Do my colleagues have any questions or comments? Seeing none, I move for passage by voice.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bangston.
Yes.
Ms. Barosa de Padilla.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Dorans. Ms. Favor. Mr. Remy. President Harden.
Yes, ordinance is passed.
Thank you, and I give the floor back to Chair Favor.
Thank you. Council President, may I move on to rules and reference?
Oh, sure.
If we could go back to page 6, where we have ordinance 1156-2023 to amend section 4509.07 of Columbus City Codes in order to address retaliatory eviction language and to repeal existing section 4509.07 of Columbus City Codes. Tonight is the last council meeting of April, which is Fair Housing Month, a time where we commemorate the passage of the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and reflect on housing discrimination and segregation, past and present. Discrimination in housing and lending comes in all types of forms and does not require someone blatantly slamming a door or making a disparaging remark. In fact, many renters and homeowners may not recognize they are being discriminated against if their experience lacks blatant prejudice. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, 2 million instances of housing discrimination are estimated to take place each year across the nation. Despite this, less than 2% of those instances are reported, as many renters and homebuyers do not fully understand what activities are illegal under the Fair Housing Act, or they are afraid to report due to fear or retaliation. To address the issue of retaliatory evictions and protect Columbus renters, we passed the retaliatory action legislation in 2018. This legislation aimed to protect renters by empowering them to stand up for their rental rights without having to fear retaliation from landlords. By ensuring tenants cannot be retaliated against, we keep tenants in safe and sanitary housing, landlords accountable, and strengthen fair housing rights. This ordinance is intended to update and clarify the retaliatory eviction criminal code section for the City of Columbus. City agencies have expressed to City Council that the existing law is outdated and difficult to enforce due to lack of definitions as well as a lack of burden-shifting scheme, which would provide guidance to the city, tenants, landlords, and the court. Although the City of Columbus has a process in place for investigating retaliatory evictions, under the existing law, any reason that the landlord proffers to justify the action taken against the tenant can serve as a defense. Under the proposed change, the court would untimely decide if the proffered reason is a valid defense. We are joined this evening by Assistant City Attorney Tiara Ross. Can you please share some more of what has been done to strengthen the previous legislation and why this update was important?
Sure thing. Council President Harden, Chair Favor, and members of council, the 2018 statute for retaliatory action was deemed unconstitutional because of a unconstitutional burden shifting. And so the retaliatory action is currently a criminal statute, meaning that if a defendant or a landlord were to violate that action or that statute, then they would be criminally liable up to 180 days in jail, $1,000 fine. Because of that, the state is required to prove every element of that offense beyond a reasonable doubt. And any burden shifting scheme that would cause the defendant to have to prove any element of that offense is therefore unconstitutional and runs afoul of the defendant's due process rights under the Constitution. And so the prior burden shifting scheme of the 2018 statute was deemed unconstitutional. So we worked to amend that ordinance to provide for an affirmative defense instead. Still allows for the state to prove a prima facie case, so we get a presumption of retaliation as we prove certain elements, and that is delineated in the statute to provide guidance to the state in the prosecution for retaliatory action. But then it provides for the opportunity for the defendant to proffer a defense by showing a non-retaliatory reason by which it took action against that tenant. We think that is going to strengthen. First of all, it will allow us to start prosecuting under the ordinance again, which is important by way of making sure that there's accountability for landlords who choose to retaliate against tenants. And then also, it allows for the defendant to have an opportunity to proffer a non-retaliatory reason, and then for the state to come back and prove pretext in the event that that non-retaliatory reason is just a cover for retaliatory action. And so we are confident that this new ordinance will not run afoul of the Constitution and will be able to move forward in prosecuting retaliatory action. I do want to take the time, our law clerk, Jordan Griffith is here. He worked very hard on research in order to uplift this statute. He spent his last day with us last week, but he came here to see the process full circle. So Jordan is here today.
Thank you, Assistant City Attorney Ross. And let me just say, as a former intern for the City Attorney's Office, you're in good company. And thank you for your hard work on this effort. But this is a really exciting piece of legislation for a lot of different reasons. In March, this body announced its housing priorities for 2023, this being one of those 12 priorities that we laid out in a press conference. And so on the last meeting for the month of April, which is Fair Housing Month, I'm excited that we have the opportunity to pass the very first piece of legislation that's a part of that housing priority list for City Council in 2023. And so I'm incredibly excited about that. But then also for the sheer fact that we know that there are too many of our residents that are living in unsafe and uninhabitable circumstances in the city of Columbus. And they do that because they are afraid to make reports to city, to our code officers or to our building departments. And so if you know of someone who is living in substandard housing, they should no longer fear the retaliation that could come by way of an eviction from a landlord if they make reports that they are living in substandard housing. And so I'm incredibly excited about this being back on the books for our residents in Columbus. With that, I excitedly, I apologize. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? I'm too excited. With that, we move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Oh, my apologies. See, I'm messing up. I wait for second reading. Move to wait for second reading.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Waived.
And now I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you. That's all I have in my committees.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next committee coming for council is the Public Safety Committee, chaired by Councilmember Remy. Councilmember, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden. I have three ordinances in public safety this evening. The first one's Ordinance 1217, 2022, to authorize the director and direct the Director of Public Safety to enter into a contract with Air Flight for the sale of a Bell 407 GXI helicopter to waive the provisions of Chapter 329 of the Columbus City Codes pertaining to the sale of city-owned personal property and to declare an emergency. This legislation authorizes the Director of Public Safety to enter into an agreement with Air Flight to serve as a broker for the sale of the Bell 407 GXI helicopter, the proceeds of which will be used to enhance our helicopter fleet by purchasing mission-critical equipment, improve operational abilities, and address public concerns regarding noise. Are there any questions or comments regarding this piece of legislation this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Next, I have ordinance 1037, 2023, to authorize the Director of Public Safety on behalf of the Division of Support Services to enter into a new contract for maintenance with Agile Networks Builders, LLC, for network connectivity between the city communication towers and the dispatching centers, to waive competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Code, to authorize an expenditure of $142,440 from the Public Safety's General Fund. Director Speaks, could you speak to the waiver of competitive bidding, please, on this piece of legislation?
Thank you, Chairperson Remy, members of council, President Harden. This vendor is uniquely qualified to perform the interconnections with the State of Ohio MARC system. They have performed this work for us for 5 years. They perform this work around the state of Ohio, and that enables our system to not only talk with other political subdivisions in Franklin County, but throughout the state of Ohio. Oh, and lastly, they are on state term.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Finally, I have ordinance 1054, 2023, to authorize the Director of Department of Public Safety to enter into a contract for maintenance and repair services for Crime Lab Instruments with Life Technologies Corporation, to waive the competitive bidding provisions of the Columbus City Codes, and to authorize the expenditure of $58,979.88 from the general fund. Director Speaks, could you speak to the waiver of competitive bidding on this piece of legislation, please?
Chairperson Remy, President Harden, members of council, this vendor is the only certified maintenance provider of this equipment, certified by the manufacturer.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
And that is all I have in public safety. With your permission, I'll move on to administration. Next, and in administration this evening, I have ordinance 945, 2023, to authorize the city auditor to transfer funds within the general fund from the Department of Finance and Management, Division of Financial Management, to the Department of Human Resources General Fund, to allow the Human Resources Director to contract with the Bridgefield Group, an executive coaching company, to authorize the city auditor to set up a certificate in the amount of $120,000 for this program, and to authorize the expenditure of $120,000 from the general fund for the purpose described above, to waive the competitive bidding requirements of the Columbus City Code and to declare an emergency. The citywide training and development manager, in consultation with the Human Resources Director, conducted a search process for executive coaching programs. The process included researching best practices and accessing the International Coaching Federation website, and researching profiles of executive coaches based on the following preferred criteria: master level coaching, certification, experience coaching C-suite and senior leaders, public sector working experience, established customer base with recommendations, and more than 5 years coaching experience. In addition to the profiles of individual coaches, established executive coaching companies were also reviewed for consideration. Interviews were conducted with 6 reputable executive coaching companies who met the preferred criteria. During the interviews, the areas of coaching methodology, executive coaching program options, and fee estimates were discussed in detail. Upon careful consideration of the information collected, the Bridgefield Group was selected as the best and most cost-effective executive coaching program for the city of Columbus. Competitive bidding requirements are being waived, as it is in the best interest of the city and the Human Resources Department to begin these sessions as quickly as possible. Are there any questions or comments from my colleagues this evening? Seeing none, I move for passage.
Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
Passed.
Thank you very much. That is all I have this evening.
Seeing no further business come for council, is there a motion to adjourn? Clerk, please call the row.
Bangston, Barosa de Padilla, Brown, Dorans, favor, Remy, President Harden.
We are adjourned. We have 2 non-agenda speakers.